My name is Aurelia Stone, and I'm 37 years old. If you'd asked me 5 years ago what the worst thing my family could do to me was, I probably would have said something naive like, forget my birthday or show up late to dinner. But life has a dark sense of humor, and family even more so. Somehow the people who raised you, who watched you scrape your knees and practice school presentations and learn how to parallel park, are often the same ones capable of cutting deepest without ever lifting a hand. I used to think we were normal. Messy, sure. Dysfunctional at times, absolutely. But normal. The kind of family that laughs too loud during holidays, forgets where they put the good scissors, and makes questionable casserole choices. I certainly didn't expect to become the antagonist in a story that wasn't mine to begin with. But here I am writing this with a knot in my chest and 2 canceled college funds I once guarded like sacred promises. I've always been the calm one, the problem solver, the person you call when your Wi-Fi goes down, when your package gets lost, when you need help lifting the attic boxes, because your back isn't what it used to be. For most of my adult life, I wore that identity proudly, like a badge of competence. Being dependable felt like a superpower until I realized it was draining me dry. I'm the youngest of 3. My older sister Vanessa is 42 and has never once lived in a universe where she wasn't the sun, everything else revolved around. My older brother Mark lives 3 states away and keeps a safe emotional distance from all of us. Something I once judged, then later envied. Vanessa is married to Ray, a man who uses sarcasm as a parenting crutch and believes fatherhood is accomplished by offering commentary from the couch. They have 2 kids, Max, who had just turned 11 that fall, and Ellie, my sweet 8-year-old shadow, who used to run into my arms every time I visited, as if she'd been waiting at the window. I don't have kids, never felt a burning need for them, but I took being an aunt seriously, sometimes too seriously. I was the one who remembered teacher conference dates, science fair deadlines, and which brand of glitter glue Ellie preferred. I made them Lego-themed cakes, spent weekends building volcano models, learned Beyblade rules, despite having zero interest, and taught Max how to ride a bike while Vanessa filmed from the porch and Ray drank something in a red cup. When Max was born, I quietly opened a college savings account for him. Nothing outrageous, just a future cushion. When Ellie came along, I did the same. I waited until Max turned 5 before telling Vanessa and Ray, imagining they'd be touched by the gesture. Instead, Vanessa clapped her hands and said, "Of course you would. You always loved playing the favorite aunt." Ray snorted and muttered, "Kid'll blow it on a gaming chair." Their reaction stung, but I brushed it off. For years, I kept contributing steadily. Birthdays, Christmas, little deposits when I got a bonus. But somewhere along the line, something shifted. The kids stopped seeing my gifts as surprises and started seeing them as obligations. Vanessa would joke in front of Max. "Better stay on Aunt Aurelia's good side. She might take you out of her will." Max would laugh, thinking it was harmless. Ray would call me Ms. Trust Fund in a mocking tone any time I paid for lunch. I kept biting my tongue, reminding myself that kids repeat what they hear. But then came the birthday, the moment everything ruptured. Max's 11th birthday felt like a chance to reset. He'd recently gotten back into Beyblades, talking about them nonstop, and I had found a rare, limited edition silver set from Japan, a collector's model lined with engraved details. It wasn't cheap, but it was thoughtful, personal. I even printed a custom label with his name, tucked it inside a matte black box with a gold ribbon. It was the kind of gift you hope a kid remembers at 25. The house was already loud when I arrived. Kids yelling Vanessa, barking orders, Ray doing absolutely nothing. I slipped the gift onto the mantel and tried to blend into the chaos. When Max finally reached my gift, Vanessa Ever, the showman, announced dramatically, "Ooh, this one's from Aunt Aurelia," as if unveiling a chest of gold. Max tore the wrapping, opened the box, and froze. For a moment his eyes widened. I saw the flicker of awe. But then just as quickly his face collapsed into a scowl. Silver Vanessa leaned over. "Isn't that the one you wanted, honey?" "No, I said gold." His voice cracked loud enough for the kids around him to fall silent. I blinked. They didn't make a gold version. Before I could explain, he grabbed one of the tops, hurled it across the room, and shouted, "I don't want this." The metallic clatter against the wall felt like a slap. Ray chuckled from the couch. "Guess you missed the memo, Aunt A." My mouth went dry. I looked at Vanessa, hoping she would intervene. Instead, she crossed her arms and glared at me. "You owe him an apology," she snapped. I thought I misheard. "Apologize." "Yes, Aurelia. You got his hopes up. You gave him something he specifically said he didn't want. Don't look so shocked. I stared at her, at Max now lounging on the couch with his iPad unfazed, at the spinning top lying abandoned near the baseboard, at the memory of the sister who once cried over a scrapbook I made for her. That woman was gone. I swallowed hard. Right, I whispered. I'm going to head out. Aurelia, what is your prob? But I was already walking away. That night alone in my quiet apartment, I opened my laptop for a different purpose. 2 college funds, nearly a decade of quiet devotion closed with a few clicks. I didn't touch the money. I moved it to a general investment fund under my name, changed the beneficiaries, and sat back in the dim lamplight feeling nothing but clarity. Not anger, not spite, just clarity. When Vanessa texted me days later asking if I'd be at Max's graduation ceremony, I replied, "Guess he'll learn gratitude somewhere else." And it should have ended there, but betrayal rarely ends cleanly. It festers. It spreads. It waits for the next spark. And in December, during the holiday chaos, I discovered just how deep this wound was going to go. In the weeks after Max's birthday meltdown, I told myself I wasn't going to let it eat me alive. It was one awful moment in a lifetime of complicated ones. Maybe it was weak, maybe it was habitual, but I defaulted to what I'd always done, keeping the peace, smoothing the edges, convincing myself that if I stayed calm enough, everything else would settle on its own. Of course it didn't. What came instead was silence. Not the kind that soothes, but the kind that bruises. Vanessa didn't call. Ray didn't text. Max didn't apologize. Ellie, bless her gentle little heart, didn't even know what to say, so she said nothing at all. They all behaved as if the incident was my overreaction, my fault, a moment I should be ashamed of rather than hurt by. So when the first text finally came 2 weeks later, it wasn't an apology. It wasn't even a greeting. It simply read, "Ellie's dance recital is next weekend. Can you drive her to rehearsal Thursday?" No hi, no acknowledgement of the birthday disaster. No recognition of the gaping, emotional crater we'd been orbiting since that day. Just an assignment, as if I were the unpaid family chauffeur, a role I hadn't realized I'd been quietly cast in for years. I stared at the message, feeling something tight snap behind my ribs. Then I typed, "Sorry, I can't make it." I didn't add an explanation. Didn't offer a fake excuse. I just drew the boundary I had always been too afraid to set. The message delivered. Seen. No reply. I didn't hear from her for nearly a month. During that quiet chunk of time, I began reflecting more honestly than I ever had in my life. When you spend years being the reliable one, the helper, the woman who shows up to assemble IKEA furniture or babysit on short notice or rescue forgotten school projects, your usefulness becomes your identity. And when your usefulness fades or you dare to withdraw it, people get angry in ways they don't. When you disappoint them as a sibling or a daughter, they get angry like customers whose order didn't arrive on time. It dawned on me that this wasn't about the Beyblade at all. It was about the fact that I had stepped out of character. I had ceased performing the role they depended on me to play. This realization lodged itself in my chest like a cold coin. The real turning point came with an email, not a heartfelt one, not even a polite one. The subject line read, "Holiday Plan." Vanessa had always insisted on hosting Christmas ever since our parents died. It wasn't about tradition. It was about control, the presentation, the validation, the subtle hierarchy she got to enforce from her kitchen island. Her message this year was no different. "Hey fam, so excited to host again this year. I'll handle the turkey stuffing and dessert. Aurelia, can you bring mac and cheese green bean casserole and your cranberry orange salad from last year? Also grab Costco cider and apple pies. Mark said he might come. Who knows? Oh, and we're doing a new gift format for the kids. Each adult should bring one big gift for each child. Max value $150. Let's keep it fun, Vanessa." Fun, right. Not a hint of offering reimbursement for the pies or cider. Not a question, just instructions. And the kicker was in the breezy way she dropped the gift demand like it wasn't a significant expense or a burden she was outsourcing. I sat with the email for a long minute, then called Mark. He answered with a dry, "Hey, little sister, the only affectionate constant between us." "Did you see Vanessa's email?" I asked. He let out a laugh so dry it sounded like gravel sliding. "Yeah," he said. "Ignored it. Like I do every year." I hesitated, chewing at my lip. "Do you think I'm overreacting if I don't go?" "No," he said instantly. "I think you'd be doing what I should have done a decade ago." We talked for over an hour, the longest conversation we'd had in months. And somewhere in that exchange, for the first time in my adult life, I admitted out loud that I felt used. Not overlooked, not undervalued. Used. Like a utility people expected to function without gratitude. Mark wasn't surprised. Aurelia, she only calls me when she wants something, he said. It's why I keep my distance. I didn't want to be that sister. I didn't want to be the person who pulled away from children I genuinely loved. So I compromised with myself. I told Vanessa I would come to Christmas but would only bring drinks and one side dish. I wasn't going to bankroll a small feast, and I wasn't going to indulge their narrative of endless giving. Her reply was just one word. Okay. Christmas morning draped everything in a thin, icy silence. I parked 3 houses down from Vanessa's place, partly because the driveway was full and partly because I needed the walk to brace myself. I carried the green bean casserole and sparkling cider inside, along with neatly wrapped books for the kids. Beautiful embossed hardcovers, one with horses for Ellie, a fantasy novel for Max. Thoughtful, personal, not flashy. Vanessa greeted me with a tight smile. Oh, just these, I said, matching her tone with a neutral smile. Ray didn't even bother to hide his smirk. Guess budget cuts hit Aunt Aurelia too. I swallowed the retort, burning the back of my tongue. I had promised myself I wouldn't rise to the bait. The meal was blandly awkward. Vanessa paraded the turkey with theatrical flair. Ray sprinkled in comments about doing all the work despite having done none of it, and Max barely looked up from his phone. Ellie sweet. Ellie flung her arms around me in a hug before sitting beside me, but even her touch felt tinged with tension, as if she sensed the invisible fault line splitting the room. When it came time for gifts, the kids tore open packages with feral enthusiasm. Ellie's eyes lit up when she unwrapped her book, and she whispered a soft thank you, Aunt A, that made my throat tighten. Max opened his, stared at it, and said flatly, "Is that it?" Before I could speak, Vanessa chimed in, "Max, say thank you," but her voice lacked any spine. Ray chuckled. "Not quite a PS5, huh?" Something inside me snapped. Not explosively, not audibly, but in a quiet, seismic way. Not anger, a decision. A realization that whatever thread had connected us had frayed beyond recognition. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't make a scene. I simply stood, gathered my coat, and walked out. No goodbye, no explanation, nothing. 3 days later, the phone calls began, unknown numbers, one after another. I ignored them until Vanessa's name finally appeared. Her voice came through furious, jagged. "I just got off the phone with Ellie's guidance counselor," she said. "Ellie's college fund is closed." "What is going on, Aurelia?" I exhaled slowly. I transferred it. "What do you mean you transferred it?" "I moved the money." "You promised that money. That was for their future." "No," I said quietly. "It was a gift. And gifts aren't obligations, especially when they're not appreciated." Silence, shocked, indignant. Then she spat, "Are you seriously this sensitive?" "No," I replied. "I'm seriously done." She hung up. The next day, Ray sent a group message accusing me of punishing innocent kids over a toy. I ignored it. But the part that broke me wasn't him. It was the Facebook post. Vanessa uploaded a picture of Max holding the empty Beyblade box with a caption, "When your rich aunt cancels your future over the color of a toy." Hundreds of likes. Comments praising her. People calling me controlling, selfish, unstable. My hands went cold. Years of love reduced to a meme. A decade of quiet sacrifice rewritten as cruelty. My reputation shattered for her entertainment. And in that swirling moment of betrayal, something inside me hardened clear and sharp. I had tried patience. I had tried distance. I had tried silence. Now I would try honesty. And whatever storm came next, I would not be the one hiding from it. In the days after Vanessa's Facebook post detonated across her curated suburban corner of the internet, my phone became a weapon I didn't dare touch. Notifications erupted like firecrackers. Friends I hadn't spoken to in years, tagging me. Distant acquaintances sending half-hearted, "Are you okay?" Messages that felt more like fishing lines than comfort. Screenshots trickled in from coworkers and college classmates. "Hey, isn't this your sister or girl? Is she really talking about you?" I ignored all of it. Silence felt safer than stepping into the battlefield she'd created. But the thing about silence is that it doesn't protect you. It doesn't soothe you. It gives the loudest people the biggest stage. And Vanessa, with her flair for drama and her talent for playing the martyr, took full advantage of my quiet. It didn't take long for Mark to call. "She told the whole family you did it out of spite," he said almost apologetically. "Said you embarrassed Max at his party, then pulled the money because you're financially unstable." The last part he delivered with a disgusted snort. That stung more than I wanted to admit. Not because it was untrue I was fine financially, but because she knew that was the softest point to stab. The sister I once supported through late rent payments and midnight breakdowns now repainted me as a petty saboteur desperate for attention. And worst of all, most of the extended family believed her or pretended to. It was easier to nod along than confront the vortex of drama Vanessa became any time she wasn't getting her way. So I did what I'd always done, I withdrew. This time not out of peacekeeping, but out of exhaustion. I ghosted group chats, stopped acknowledging birthday reminders, went to work, came home, and lived in a quiet loop of nothingness. Even my coworkers noticed. "You okay, Aurelia?" my manager asked one afternoon, concern furrowing his brow. "I'm fine," I lied. But I wasn't. I wasn't angry. I wasn't sad. I was hollow, like someone had scooped out my insides and left a shape that looked like me, but felt like an empty room. And the worst part, the part I couldn't admit to anyone, not even myself, was that I missed the kids. I missed Ellie's little voice, sharing horse facts the way she'd tug my sleeve to show me a drawing. I missed Max before the entitlement seeped into him when he'd greet me at the door asking if I brought new board games. I missed the holidays that once felt chaotic in a warm way, not a suffocating one. But every time nostalgia pulled at me, another memory cut it down. The Beyblade spinning helplessly across the floor, Vanessa demanding an apology, Ray's smirk, the Facebook post twisting my heart into something unrecognizable. It wasn't the family I missed. It was the fantasy of who they used to be. What I was really doing was grieving, not people illusions. By February, the hollowness settled into something heavier. Not depression exactly, more like emotional jet lag. I went through the motions: work, microwave dinners, sleep, repeat. Life felt muted, like someone had turned my world's volume down. Then came Angela. If everyone else in my life had slowly drifted into the periphery, Angela was the one person who refused to let me disappear. She had known me before the family fractures, before adulthood turned me into the dependable fixer everyone relied on. We'd survived college together. Heartbreaks, job changes, the loss of my parents, the kinds of things that bind people in ways time doesn't erode. She texted me one Tuesday morning lunch, "Today. I'm kidnapping you if I have to." I almost said no. Instead, I typed okay. The diner was small and quiet, the kind of place where you could talk for hours without being rushed. Angela stood up the second she saw me and wrapped her arms around me like I'd been away at war. "You look like you've been living under a rock," she said, half joking, half heartbroken. "Not a rock," I murmured, sliding into the booth. "More like under everyone's expectations." Her expression softened. "Okay, start talking." And so I did. From Max's birthday tantrum to Vanessa's Facebook smear to the college funds, the entire saga poured out of me like a confession I didn't realize I'd been holding back. Angela didn't interrupt, didn't offer platitudes, didn't gasp at the dramatic moments the way some people do to keep the conversation spicy. She listened with the kind of attention that feels like a blanket being pulled over your shaking shoulders. When I finally stopped, drained and embarrassed by how much I had unloaded, she leaned in, studying me with a clarity that made me sit up straighter. "You know what your problem is," she said softly. "You've been playing the hero in a story written by people who don't want one." I blinked. "What does that even mean?" "It means," she said, touching her fingertip to the table for emphasis, "you keep showing up like goodness is going to change them. But Vanessa and Ray don't want a peacemaker. They want a silent servant. They want someone who takes the hits, buys the gifts, keeps the peace, and never asks for anything." It hit me harder than any insult Vanessa had ever thrown at me. Angela continued, "You need to rebuild. Not for them, for you." Rebuild, the word echoed. Not recover, not fix, rebuild. Something in me shifted, not dramatically, not instantly, but like a stiff lock turning after years of rust. So I started, not with a grand gesture, not with some epiphany that made me leap out of bed. It began quietly, almost cautiously. The first step, I cleaned my apartment. Really cleaned it. Room by room, bag by bag. I tossed out old junk I'd held onto out of guilt or obligation. School crafts the kids made years ago, broken toys, cards, that suddenly felt like guilt anchors rather than mementos. I didn't burn anything. I simply let it go. Next, I took a week off work. No one questioned it. Apparently, burnout had been oozing from my pores. I drove upstate, rented a tiny cabin, brought a stack of books, and turned my phone onto airplane mode for 4 straight days. No texts, no family drama, no notifications, just crackling firewood thick blankets and the unsettling realization that the world didn't fall apart when I stepped away. Then came finances. I moved the college fund money into a high-yield portfolio. Not out of spite, but out of intention. For something better, something meaningful. I didn't know what yet. Maybe a scholarship fund, maybe something for kids in unstable homes. But for the first time, the idea excited me. Back at work, I shifted too. Volunteered for projects I actually cared about. Led a development sprint on an educational app I'd been quietly passionate about. My manager pulled me aside one day and said, "I don't know what changed, but I like this version of you." I laughed. Me too. By April, I'd taken up running again slow, steady laps around the park at dawn. The physical momentum tugged the emotional weight with it gradually, like a stubborn tide receding. For a while, it felt like I'd finally broken free. Until late May. That's when Vanessa emailed me. Subject line: let's talk about what really happened. The email was 4 paragraphs of carefully structured manipulation, softened blame, distorted memories, digs hidden beneath concerned phrasing. She insisted she'd never meant things to go public, that I had blindsided her, that I had abandoned her kids without warning, as if years of diminishing respect and weaponized entitlement had been invisible. She said Max cried for days after the college fund vanished, said Ellie was confused why Aunt Aurelia stopped loving them. That line twisted the knife with cruel precision. I read the email twice, then deleted it. Instead of writing back to her, I wrote something else, pages in a journal. Stories I had never let myself tell, moments I had swallowed for years, the nights I babysat at the last minute, the birthdays I planned, the dates I canceled because Vanessa needed help, the countless afternoons I gave away as if my time had no value. And for the first time, it became clear I had never been treated like an equal. I had been the unpaid emotional laborer of the family. Angela saw it too. She encouraged me to submit one of the journal entries to a local storytelling event. I thought she was joking. She was not. 2 weeks later, I found myself standing on a little stage in a downtown bookstore reading aloud to 30 strangers about the day a silver Beyblade cracked a decade's worth of illusion. When I ended with, "Guess, he'll learn gratitude somewhere else," the room fell utterly silent and then burst into applause. Something in me healed that night, a fracture finally aligning. I didn't need Vanessa's approval. I didn't need validation from Ray. I didn't need Max's affection. I didn't even need the family's understanding. I needed me. I was enough. But life has a way of circling back. Just when peace began settling into me, a new email appeared in my inbox from Ellie. A short, trembling message sent from her school account. "Aunt Aurelia, can I ask you something? I don't know who else to talk to." And my heart, already stitched together, once felt the seam pull. Ellie's first email had been small, a single uncertain line, but it broke something open inside me that I'd carefully locked away. Her second email, the longer, rambling one, arrived 2 hours later, spilling out in the clumsy honesty only an 8-year-old could manage. She didn't understand why I was mad, she said. Max told her I had taken their money because I was selfish. Vanessa told her to mind her business. Ellie didn't believe either of them. She wrote, "You always helped me with homework, and you remember my recitals. And I still have the book you gave me last year. I don't care if Max is mad. I miss you." I had to close my laptop and sit with my hands pressed against my eyes just to steady myself. This wasn't a bargaining chip or a guilt trip. This wasn't manipulation. This was a small child trying to understand why the one adult who made her feel seen had suddenly gone quiet. I wrote back something gentle, something safe. "I miss you too. You can always talk to me here. No pressure. I'm still cheering for you." Over the next few weeks, we became secret pen pals. She sent drawings, stick figure horses with lopsided smiles. She sent jokes she'd overheard at recess updates about a girl in her class who wore sparkly shoelaces and questions about baking brownies. I replied with encouragement, silly doodles of my own, and the kind of calm, steady presence that children always recognize even when adults don't. I never asked about Vanessa or Ray. I never dug for details. I kept everything neutral and supportive. But kids aren't stupid. Ellie especially wasn't. One afternoon she wrote, "Do you think it's okay to feel sad when your parents are mean to people?" Another mom said Max deserves more things because he's older. She said I need to stop being jealous. But I wasn't jealous. I just wanted to say thank you for my book. And then, why does she get mad when I cry? I stared at those words for a long time, my fingers hovering above the keyboard, unable to form an answer that wouldn't betray the truth or weaponize it. I didn't tell her what I wanted to, that she wasn't imagining it, that her feelings were valid, that her mother had a pattern of lifting one child up at the cost of the other. Instead, I wrote, "You're allowed to feel anything you feel. None of it makes you bad." But I didn't let it stop there. I started saving everything. Every email, every drawing, every timestamp. I bought an external hard drive, labeled it Ellie, and backed up every word. Not out of paranoia, out of intuition. Because somewhere beneath the warm exchanges, I sensed the same storm brewing that I'd once ignored. And I knew Vanessa wouldn't let this connection continue for long. I was right. Mid-June. My phone buzzed with a call from an unfamiliar number. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, another call, then another. Finally, I answered on the fourth. Ray's voice crackled through the line, sounding irritated and half bored. "Just giving you a heads up," he said. "Vanessa saw something on Ellie's laptop. You two have been emailing. She's pissed. Says you're trying to turn Ellie against us. She's talking about blocking everything, maybe calling a lawyer, whatever." A pause. Then the cherry on top, "I don't really care, but yeah, thought you should know." He hung up before I could respond. I saved the voicemail. 10 minutes later, Vanessa texted me herself. "You need to stop contacting Ellie. This is wildly inappropriate. She's a child." The irony hit me like a physical blow. I was being accused of manipulating a child by the same woman who had weaponized her kids' emotions against me for years. The same woman whose son threw a tantrum over a birthday gift and was praised for it. The same woman who told Ellie she was jealous for feeling grateful. I didn't reply. Instead, the next morning, I called Sandra, a lawyer I'd worked with years ago. Sandra was calm in the way cliffs are calm, unyielding, ancient, immune to theatrics. "I'm not trying to sue anyone," I told her, "but I want to protect myself." "Smart," she said. "Do you have documentation?" "I have everything. Emails, voicemails, timestamps, screenshots. Consistent, harmless communication between an aunt and a niece without a single inappropriate or suggestive line. Just a child reaching out for connection and safety." Sandra told me to print copies. Save digital versions. Don't respond to threats. Keep everything clean. I followed her instructions meticulously. But for the first time in years, I wasn't acting from a place of reactivity. I wasn't scrambling to fix anything. I wasn't even trying to regain favor. I was preparing. And preparation comes with clarity? My next step was Mark. We met for coffee at a quiet cafe, tucked away on a side street where nobody would interrupt us. I told him everything. The email exchanges, the voicemail, Sandra's involvement, my theory about the golden child dynamic repeating itself through generations. Mark listened without interrupting. When I finished, he leaned back, exhaled, and said, "You're not wrong." He talked about our childhood memories I'd forgotten or buried, the way Mom doted on Vanessa, how Dad never bothered to correct it. Vanessa learned early that attention was currency, tears were tools, and drama was gravity. "Max is just the updated version of her," Mark said. "Ellie doesn't deserve to grow up the way we did." "She's smart," I said. "She just wants to be seen." "So what do we do?" he asked. I expected indifference, distance, the same detachment he'd maintained for years. But instead, he offered something rare and unexpected. "Whatever you need, Aurelia, I'm in." That night, I wrote something I had been avoiding for months. A statement not for Vanessa, for Ellie. It wasn't emotional or accusatory. It wasn't a rant or a plea. It was a clean, chronological recounting of everything from Max's birthday to the closure of the funds, the Facebook smear, the silence, the emails, the threats. I included screenshots and copies of messages. I made it kind, measured, honest. Something Ellie could someday read and understand, that I never left her, I fought for her. I sealed it in a manila envelope, wrote "For Ellie, when she's older" on the front, and handed it to Mark. "Why me?" he asked. "Because if Vanessa finds it in my home, she'll destroy it." He nodded, tucked it under his arm, and didn't say another word. But I still wasn't done. Angela, my constant, my anchor, helped me take the next step. We set up a small nonprofit. Nothing flashy, a name, a mission, a seed fund. The name was Second Chances Fund. The mission to support children from unstable or emotionally neglectful homes with mentorships and scholarships. The seed money came from where the college funds used to be. Not revenge, redirection. If Vanessa didn't want my support, someone else would receive it. As summer shifted toward fall, an opportunity emerged, unexpected and quiet. It was Ellie's 9th birthday. There was no party, no balloons, no cake. Just a Facebook post from Vanessa, "Happy 9th to our sweet Ellie. She's growing up so fast." One photo. Max holding a brand new iPad, Ellie smiling and clapping for him. Clapping. On her birthday. Angela sent me the screenshot with a single line, "Tell me you see it." I did. I saw everything. And for the first time since this began, my purpose sharpened with absolute certainty. This wasn't a feud. It wasn't about money or gifts or holidays. This was about a child. And I would not lose her to the same cycle that had stolen my childhood Mark's clarity and Vanessa's empathy. It was time to act. Not with rage, not with loud, messy confrontation, but with precision, with truth, with undeniable force. The thing about waiting for the right moment is that you don't always know it's right until it arrives. And when it did, it came not as a dramatic confrontation or a furious phone call, but as a quiet message relayed to Angela one chilly November afternoon. Ellie had submitted an essay to the Second Chances Fund writing contest. We launched the program quietly at the start of fall, a small initiative disguised as a general creative writing competition for 4th through 8th graders. No flashy marketing, no donor dinners, no photo ops. It was intentional invisibility. I had designed every piece of it, every prompt, every rubric, every age bracket, with one type of child in mind, the kind who slips through the cracks because the adults in their life are too busy praising the loudest sibling. And so, when Angela forwarded me the note from the school counselor, one of our 4th graders submitted an essay that made me pause, my breath stilled, before I even opened the file attached. It was titled, "Things I Wish Adults Would Say." The writing was simple, uneven, marked with spelling errors and honest phrasing. But what stopped me cold wasn't the mistakes, it was the feeling. I wish adults would ask if I'm okay instead of telling me I should be. I wish adults would notice when I clap for people on my birthday. I wish adults would not tell me being sad is jealousy. I wish adults remembered me when they take pictures. I wish someone would say I did a good job even if Max cries first. There it was so plainly written, so heartbreakingly clear. It wasn't signed, but it didn't need to be. It was her. Ellie. Little Ellie clapping for others on her own birthday, writing an essay about being invisible, 8 years old and already fluent in the emotional language of being overlooked. Angela read it first. She forwarded it to me with a trembling Aurelia. "Honey, I think this is your girl. I didn't cry, though the pressure behind my eyes was ferocious. I didn't crumble. I didn't rage. Instead, something settled over me, a heavy, resolute calm." We brought Ellie's essay to the panel. The judges didn't know her story. They didn't know mine. They just saw a raw, brilliant piece of writing from a child who deserved more. It won unanimously. The awards ceremony was set for early December at a small local library. Nothing fancy. A cluster of folding chairs, a makeshift podium, a table of refreshments no one would touch until the end. Angela personally sent the invitation to Vanessa and Ray. They didn't RSVP. They didn't ask about the scholarship. They didn't mention the essay. When the night finally arrived, I sat in the back of the room, hidden behind a column, my hair tucked under a simple hat. I wasn't there to be seen. I was there to witness. Ellie entered alone, wearing a blue dress that hung a little too big at the shoulders. Clutching the envelope, Angela had mailed a formal invitation addressed to Ms. Ellie Rivera. She looked around the room with that hopeful, searching children do when they've been trained to expect disappointment. Her parents were not there. Not even a brother. Not a neighbor. Not a carpool mom. She sat in a chair in the front row by herself. When they called her name, she stepped up to the podium, small and trembling, holding her paper with both hands. Her voice shook, but she read every word. Not rushed, not hesitant, just honest. People clapped, some cried. Angela wiped tears discreetly. I remained utterly still, my heart thudding like a quiet drum. This wasn't triumph, this wasn't vengeance. This was a child being seen. After she finished, Ellie accepted the certificate, her name printed in bright ink, and the $500 scholarship. She tucked the envelope into her dress pocket with the kind of care only children give to things that matter. She walked out alone, clutching her coat. That was when I knew Vanessa and Ray were no longer simply flawed. They were negligent in a way that shaped a child's soul. The next morning, I submitted a notarized affidavit to Child Protective Services. Sandra, my lawyer, helped assemble everything. Ellie's essay, the email history, the voicemail from Ray, screenshots of Vanessa's posts, photos of the birthday where Ellie clapped for Max, a timeline of emotional neglect and favoritism. It wasn't inflammatory, it wasn't vindictive, it wasn't embellished. It was factual, measured, documented, a pattern of behavior consistent enough to warrant intervention. I didn't ask for custody. I didn't demand anything. I simply offered myself as a willing relative should Ellie need placement. The state did the rest. Within 2 weeks, a social worker visited Vanessa's home. I didn't need to see the report to imagine what she saw. Ellie being cut off mid-sentence, Ray dismissing questions with beer in hand, Max rolling his eyes, calling his sister dramatic, Vanessa framing everything as attention-seeking. And then Vanessa learned I had been the one to file. The explosion was immediate. 3 voicemails, one screaming, one sobbing, one threatening legal action, texts accusing me of trying to steal her daughter, a Facebook rant that she clearly thought made her look noble. It backfired spectacularly, because in her rage, she posted screenshots of Ellie's private emails. Child Services was already watching. Posting a minor's confidential communication on social media is a severe breach of privacy. When confronted, Vanessa doubled down, calling Ellie's concerns childish drama. Then came the breaking point. Ellie wrote another essay at school, this one titled, "Things I Wish They Understood." In it, she described what it felt like to be the forgotten child, how Max's misbehavior was dismissed as spirited while her tears were scolded, how she read books alone on her birthday, how someone outside her home made her feel safe, and how her parents called that manipulation. It was the final piece CPS needed. In January, a judge approved a 6-month temporary guardianship arrangement. Not full custody, not permanent, but enough. Ellie came to live with me the next week. She arrived with one suitcase. No goodbye from Vanessa, no hug, just a glare from Ray and a resentful scowl from Max as she climbed into my car. Ellie didn't speak during the drive. She just held the suitcase like a shield. When we reached my apartment, she walked directly into the spare room I'd prepared, pale blue walls, a shelf full of books, a tiny desk near the window. She sat on the bed, hands folded in her lap. I knelt in front of her. "You don't have to say anything," I told her softly. "Just know you're safe now. This is your space." Her eyes filled. "Can I read before bed?" she whispered. I smiled. "You can do anything you want." That night, as I passed her room on the way to mine, I heard the faintest sound. Soft, rhythmic, deliberate. Ellie was clapping. Not for someone else. Not for her brother. For herself. And in that moment, I knew the quiet war was finally shifting. We weren't done. Not yet. But for the first time, the battleground was no longer hers to survive alone. The morning after Ellie moved in, the apartment felt different, not heavier, but fuller. A presence so quiet and careful that I didn't notice it until I stepped into the hallway and saw a tiny pair of socks tucked neatly beside the laundry basket. She'd labeled them with a small sticky note, "Ellie's," as if afraid her things might accidentally take up too much space. The first few days were delicate. Ellie stayed close, hovering in that invisible doorway between want and fear. She asked for permission before doing everything, even choosing a snack. If I stepped into the kitchen, she'd appear silently, as if checking whether she was allowed to exist there too. Children raised in the shadows walk carefully, but slowly, step by step, she began to unfurl. At breakfast, she sat a little straighter. At school drop-offs, she lingered at the car door to ask if I'd be there at pickup. In the evenings, she curled into the corner of the sofa with her horsebooks humming softly. One night, she brought me a drawing of my apartment with 2 figures standing beside the couch, both smiling, both holding books. "Is this us?" I asked. She nodded. I wanted to make it look like a home. I swallowed the ache rising in my throat and hugged her. Not once during those early days did Vanessa call to ask how Ellie was doing. Not once did Ray check in. They only contacted their lawyer. Their anger wasn't rooted in concern. It was rooted in losing control. Child Services moved quickly. There were interviews, evaluations, supervised check-ins, and a school counselor's report supporting the judge's decision. Vanessa tried to file an emergency motion claiming I had brainwashed Ellie, but it collapsed under the weight of her own documented behavior. Screenshots, essays, voicemails, posts, a digital trail of neglect she had created herself. Vanessa raged online, posting cryptic quotes about betrayal and ungrateful relatives. Ray complained at work until HR called him in for a professional conduct review. Word spread. Comments turned against them. Friends unfollowed. PTA acquaintances withdrew. And Max, he spiraled. The golden child, stripped of the spotlight, reacted like someone losing oxygen. Suspensions at school. Talking back to teachers. A fight in the cafeteria. Vanessa blamed everyone but herself, me, the school, Ellie, even Ray. Meanwhile, Ellie transformed. Her teachers wrote emails saying she was more engaged in class. Her counselor noted she was expressing emotions without being shut down. She joined a book club. She made a new friend named Na, a quiet girl with braids and a mischievous smile. Na's mother told me Ellie fit right in. At home, she grew bolder in tiny, beautiful ways. She asked to decorate her room, picking pastel wall decals, a small rug with stars, and a corkboard where she pinned every certificate she'd earned. She started helping me cook, standing on a little stool to stir the pasta with an intensity that made me laugh. One evening after a long day, I found her sitting by the balcony staring at the sunset. She wasn't sad. She wasn't withdrawn. She was simply thinking. "Penny for your thoughts," I asked, settling beside her. She shrugged. "The sky looks like sherbet." I smiled. "It does." She leaned against my arm, small and warm. "Aunt Aurelia, do you think people can be happy even if their family doesn't like them?" I turned to look at her, really look. "Yes, I think people can be happy even if others get it wrong. And I think you," I tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, "are going to build a life full of joy that has nothing to do with anyone else's mistakes." She nodded, absorbing every word. The guardianship review in June was quiet, almost anticlimactic. Sandra sat beside me, composed and steady. Vanessa and Ray arrived late, flustered, defensive. The judge reviewed the documented timeline, the counselor's letters, Ellie's essays, the home evaluations. He asked Ellie if she felt safe. She replied, "Yes, I feel seen." That was enough. The temporary guardianship became permanent. Vanessa burst into quiet, furious tears. Ray stormed into the hallway, cursing. Max glared at everyone, especially Ellie, who shrank behind my arm. When we stepped outside, Ellie slipped her hand into mine without being asked. That night, back on the balcony, we watched the sun melt into the horizon, streaks of tangerine and rose gold filling the sky. Ellie wore her new summer pajamas, blue with little ponies galloping across the fabric, and held a mug of warm milk with both hands. After a long silence, she asked quietly, "Aunt Aurelia, do you think I'll ever stop feeling sad about them?" There was no easy answer, no promise I could make without lying, so I chose the truth. "Maybe not," I said softly, "but you'll learn to live happy anyway." She nodded, considering it. "Happy anyway," she echoed. She leaned her head on my shoulder as the sky darkened. In that moment, I realized something profound. Revenge hadn't been the point. Winning hadn't been the point. The real victory was this child, safe, loved, growing into herself without fear. I didn't save Ellie. I gave her the space to save herself. The rest, Vanessa's anger, Ray's fall, Max's spiral, was background noise. Consequence, not revenge. Echoes fading behind us as Ellie stepped into a new life. And as the first night of summer wrapped around us like warm air, Ellie squeezed my hand, small and sure. For the first time in a long time, the world felt like it was finally pointing forward.